Hi, seventh graders. So today I want to talk to you about percent of change, which is the 6.4 lesson. You were given a puzzle time worksheet to do, but I just want to talk to you about basically these two very simple formulas, because that's what you're going to use to solve the percent of increase or the percent of decrease. And then there's also another key idea about the percent of error. You don't really have any problems to work out for your puzzle time because basically you're doing increase and decrease, but I do want to talk to you about the percent of error. Let me talk to you first about the percent of increase and decrease. So we're going to use the problems here. Actually, let's start with the percent of increase. We're going to talk about 9 through 16. I hope you can see that when you go from 20 ounces to 25 ounces, that's a decrease. And when you go from 10 hours to 6 hours, that's also a decrease. The directions tell you to write whether it's an increase or decrease and then by how much. So keep in mind the percent of change, okay, for increase. So let's use one of these problems that's an increase. So if we use the 15 feet to 33 feet, that shows actually we'll use the first one because that's 20 ounces to 25 ounces, that's an increase. So if we take a look at the percent of change, what we want to do, the percent of increase, is you take the new amount, which would be 25 ounces. So you take the new amount, 25 ounces, and you're going to subtract it from the original amount, and then you're going to divide it by the original amount, which was 20. So basically you're going to be left with 5/20. Now you can see that that's going to end up being a percent. I would actually simplify that, or you could simply make that into a percent using the proportion. Since 20 is a factor of 100, you can use the equivalent fraction method to find the percent. 5 times 5 is 25. So the percent of increase is 25%. So that's how you find the percent of increase. So for number 9, 20 ounces to 25 ounces is 25%. But this is the work that I would expect to see. For number 10, if you're going to do the decrease, because you can see very obviously that 10 hours to 6 hours is a decrease, and you can see that it says the percent is the original amount minus the new amount, because you're never going to have a negative, okay, even when you have it. So you have the original amount, which is 10 hours, minus the new amount. You're always dividing by the original amount, always dividing by the original amount. So you're going to end up with 4/10. And again, when you have that, that's a decimal, and I hope you can see 4/10 is 40%. But if you don't see that, you could do the equivalent ratios, equivalent percents is a proportion. So you can multiply both by 10 and you end up with 40. So that is 40%. Okay, and for the next one, though, I want to talk to you about is figuring out when it's increased, okay, 42% or 42 customers is increased by 50%. What that means is you're going to multiply by that percent, but you're also going to include that whole amount. So what I would do is basically, if you think about it, you're going to do 42 times 50% and then add that to 42. So if you do that, that's basically what I would do is I would say, okay, I have 50%. I'm going to convert that to a decimal. So that's 0.5. And I started out with 42. So when we do a percent increase, we're going to multiply, all right? And you're going to have all of 42. So that's times 1 plus, so you're going to multiply 1 plus 5/10. So what you're going to do is 42 times 1.5. That's going to get you, 5 times 2 is 10, carry that over, 21, hold the place here for the 0, 42, and I have 6. And so it's 63. So taking 42, increasing it by 50% is 63. And you can see that your answer there is Y. Okay, and that's how you do that. Now when you figure out a decrease, okay, so I'll show you the decrease. That's an increase, and that's basically figuring out like a subtotal if you had a 50%, if they marked up the price 50%. In 70 pennies decreased by 20%, when you have a decrease, of course, you're going to end up subtracting. So when that happens, you're going to have 70 decreased by 20%. Basically, think about it this way. If I had a 20% off coupon, or I'm decreasing it, I would have 80% of the price. So if you simply multiply 70 times 80%, and again, convert that whenever you're multiplying, convert it to a decimal, and then I'm just going to multiply that out, and I get 56. So 70 decreased by 20% is 56, and you can see that your answer is letter E. So you have number 1 with the answer of letter Y, and number 2 with the answer of letter E. So you approach all of these problems in the same way. 30 inches increased by 30%. So whenever you have an increase, you're multiplying it by that whole by that whole number. So you're multiplying that by 1 plus the 30%, which is 0.3, or times 1.3. Whenever I have a 0 in the number, I like to move it around here, okay, and drop that. So we have 9, and that's 3, so I have 39. So 30 pennies increased by 30% is 39, and you can see that the letter M is your answer. The question was, why did the picture go to jail? And I believe the answer was something about being framed. Somebody framed it, so you get the corniness of that joke, but you understand what we're talking about here. Each one of these is approached in the same way. If we take a look at number 4, I'll do number 4, and then I'll jump down to a couple. I'm not going to go over every single problem unless I get a request to you, but I just wanted to talk to you about these lessons, about these particular problems. We'll do another one. 125 pounds decreased by 4%. So if you have 125, if it's 4% decreased, then you're basically going to have 96%. So basically you're multiplying by 96%. So if I multiply 125 by 96, it's not going to be very much, okay, when you're decreasing it by 4%, what that's going to look like, because that's very little decrease, so a lot of 195. So you expect a bigger number. 6 times 5 is 30, and 12 plus 3 is 15. 6, 7, hold the spot, we have 45. 9 times 2 is 18, plus 4 is 22, carry the 2. 9 times 1 plus 2 is 11. So when I add all of this up, and this should make sense that basically I have 120. So 125 decreased by 4% is 120. And you can see that that answer is letter S. When you're taking a look, we did the first, I think, 2 or 3 of these